Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Paul Ainsley. I am the chair of the General Government Committee. We do have quorum, as confirmed by the clerks. I'm going to call meeting number 17 to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room Meeting number 1. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. For the land acknowledgement, I would like to say on behalf of myself, my colleagues, and our staff that although we may be meeting at different locations today, the General Government Committee would like to acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also would like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We don't have any registered speakers today. The city clerk has provided all of our agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your electronic devices. I'd also like to remind you to please submit your motions by email. Staff are available at ggc@toronto.ca to help with any motions. At this point, I'll ask if there's any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none. Can I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting of September 17th, 2024? Councillor Burnside, all in favor? That carries. I'm going to run through the agenda. So our first item is GG 17.1. It's a OMERS update from the City of Toronto, their annual update. So I'm going to hold that down. GG 17.2 is an amendment to purchase order number 605-2202 with Deloitte Incorporated for the provision of system integrated services for the financial transformation program. Any holds? Seeing none. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? That carries. GG 17.3, amendment to purchase order number 605-3894 with Heritage Restoration Incorporated for the construction of the Allan Gardens Alm House Heritage Building restoration and functional upgrade for Parks, Forestry, and Recreation. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Mantis. All in favor? That carries. GG 17.4, amendment to retainer agreement purchase order 603-5311 with Osler, Hoskin, and Harcourt LLP for legal services related to pensions and benefits issues.
I'll move that, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Crisanti. All in favor? That carries. GG 17.5, amendment to blanket contract 4702-4197 with Lystek International Corporation and blanket contract 47024222 with Terratec Environmental Limited for the Biosolids Haulage and beneficial use at Ashbridges Bay Wastewater Treatment Plant for Toronto Water in Ward 14. Any holds? Sludge? Nobody? Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Chang. All in favor? That carries. GG 17.6, award of document 461-896-1713 to Torbear Contracting Incorporated for the rehabilitation and upgrade of 2 stormwater pumping stations in Group 7 for Toronto Water in Wards 1 and 3.
I'll move that, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Holiday. Did you want to hold it? Or? Nope. Okay. Moved by Councillor Crisanti. All in favor? That carries. Sorry? Yep. GG 17.8, non-competitive, sorry, am I ahead of myself? GG 17.7, non-competitive contract with Rocket Software for proprietary court management software licenses, professional services, and related maintenance. It has a confidential attachment.
I'd like to
Councillor Ching's holding it? Okay.
Thank you.
GG 17.8, non-competitive contracts with the Intergraph Canada Limited and Quatro Group Software Systems Incorporated for the provision of proprietary fire services, information, and technology systems for Toronto Fire Services. Any holds? Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? That carries. GG 17.9, award of a collaborative procurement contract for Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace Master Agreement, OECM-2023-441-11, to Outdoor Outfits Limited for Toronto Paramedic Services via the city stores.
Hold, please.
Councillor Chang is holding number 9.
Thank you.
GG 17.10, 100 Ethennonnhawahstihnen Lane, below market lease agreement with the Petit Pearson Childcare North York for childcare services in Ward 17. Any holds? Moved by Councillor Crisanti. All in favor? That carries. GG 17.11, litigation arising from the construction of the Ethennonnhawahstihnen Community Recreation Center and Library. There's a confidential attachment with this one. Any holds? Can I have somebody move it, please? Councillor Burnside, all in favor? That carries. GG 17.12, 21 Western Battery Road, below market lease agreement with the Network Childcare Services for childcare services in Ward 10.
Hold, please.
Councillor Chang is holding number 12. GG 17.13, expropriation of easements to construct the Black Creek Sanitary Trunk Sewer Relief System Stage 2. This is in Ward 6 and 7. It's got a confidential attachment. Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? That carries. GG 17.14, extended authority of the bid award panel during Council's 2024 summer recess.
Hold, please.
Councillor Chang is holding number 14. GG 17.15, Toronto Paramedic Services, their climate report.
Hold, please.
Councillor Chang is holding number 15. Number 17, GG 17.16, update on the status of public spaces around Nathan Phillips Square and Toronto City Hall. Councillor Mantis, you wanted to hold that? Okay, and Councillor Mantis is holding number 16. That's it for the agenda run through. We're going to go back to the beginning and welcome OMERS for their update to the City of Toronto for their annual presentation. Gentlemen, the floor is yours whenever you're ready. Oh, hold on. The clerk is telling me thumbs up. Now you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to committee. For the benefit of the newer councillors as well as staff in attendance, some quick reminders of your appointees to the OMERS board. I am Joe Pinichetti, for those that don't know me. My former years in Toronto were 2002 to 2015 as CFO and city manager. On retirement, I was appointed by the city to serve on the OMERS Sponsors Corporation Board of Directors in 2016, and I've served on numerous committees, including chairing the audit committee. I'll introduce John Armstrong to you.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back in front of the committee this morning. Thank you for the audience. As it notes on the slide, my name is John Armstrong. I think that's a much younger version of myself, but I'll take it. I was appointed to the OMERS Administration Corp board in 2022, having been nominated by the City of Toronto. I currently chair the Human Resources Committee of the board, and I am a member of the Investment Committee of the board.
Mr. Chair, we'll try to do this within 15 minutes or so. And today, in terms of agenda, we have an overview of the current OMERS governance structure, our membership, provide you with an update on the investments in our mid-year performance, and finish with an update on the sponsors corporation. First of all, I'll begin with a brief reminder for those in the room that are not familiar with OMERS. We're a little different than other public pension plans in that we have two distinct corporations. The administration corporation, that's the left side of the slide, is responsible for pension administration, investment of the OMERS fund, and plan valuation. The right-hand side is the sponsors corporation, responsible for what we refer to as the ABCs, appointments, benefits, and contributions. And I'll touch on more specifics in my remarks later. Importantly, an overview of the size and scope of OMERS. We serve multiple generations. OMERS is a very complex and diverse membership with over 626,000 members in the plan throughout Ontario, about 274,000 pensioners and deferred members, and 352,000 active members. The active members include about 2/3 full-time and about 1/3 non-full-time. Of course, managing a plan the size of OMERS over long term is very complex for a number of reasons. First of all, it's our very diverse membership, which makes it difficult to design benefits that are relevant for the different profiles of members across multiple sectors. Second, we need to make sure that the benefits remain meaningful and contributions are always reasonable and fair for our future generations of members, as well as the current membership. And third, the future, as we all know, is constantly uncertain. And we consider decades of future potential outcomes and environments, much of which John will be speaking to in a few minutes, assess the risks and opportunities that lie ahead, and make decisions about benefits and contributions today that will be sustainable for the plan in the future. Finally, like other plans, OMERS is a maturing plan, meaning the pensioners are growing. We continue to pay out more in benefits, $6 billion, as noted at the bottom of the slide, in pensions, while we're only collecting $5 billion in contributions annually. The increase in maturity and its impact on long-term sustainability of the plan remains the priority of OMERS. Now, more specifically for the Toronto numbers in membership, we are the largest of the 1,000 employers participating in OMERS, nearly 30,000 within the city itself, and just under 16,000 in Toronto agencies and corporations. Primarily, of course, the Police Board, Toronto Hydro, and Toronto Community Housing Corporation. The 45,000 Toronto active members represent about 13% of the total OMERS membership. And I should note that there's been a significant growth in membership in the past 2 years due to the increase in non-full-time membership, and those are the numbers at the bottom of the slide. And that has increased dramatically because OMERS made a specific policy direction to minimize, virtually eliminate any hurdles that there used to be for non-full-time members to join OMERS. There's 4 key areas of that's it for the introduction, and now it's over to John for the admin corporation.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks, Joe, for that. Just briefly before I get into my investment report, I wanted to continue with the theme of OMERS impact and provide you with a quick summary of a 2023 study that we conducted with Ken Sia to assess the economic contribution of OMERS activities across the province of Ontario. As you can see on the slide, the study found that 1 in 11 households in Ontario are impacted by OMERS. OMERS activities generate nearly $14 billion of GDP annually in Ontario, and these activities support more than 140,000 jobs across the province. So overall, a pretty significant economic impact in addition to serving our members, our sponsors, our employers, and our other stakeholders. Turning to slide 8, our investments continue to be well diversified By asset type and geography, we manage today almost 130 billion in assets. Approximately 21% of our assets are invested in Canada, just over 50% in the United States, 18% in Europe, and approximately 10% in Asia Pacific, which is mainly Australia and India. We are a proud Canadian investor. We like Canadian investments because we have a deep understanding of the investment climate here in Canada. And importantly, we have a natural desire for Canadian income because we pay pensions in Canadian dollars. Today, we have approximately 30 billion invested in Canadian assets, including businesses that are harnessing technologies, business companies that are fighting climate change, key infrastructure assets like Bruce Power, which provides 30% of the power here in the province of Ontario. We own landmark hotels, including the recently redeveloped Park Hyatt Hotel at Bloor and Avenue Road, and the Intercontinental Hotel on Front Street. As well, we hold positions in many of the well-known shopping centers here in the GTA, including Yorkdale, Square One, and Scarborough Town Centre. If I could focus you for a minute on the left side of the slide, from an asset mix perspective, our team has adjusted our various asset exposures to optimize the portfolio for the current market environment. In particular, as I telegraphed to you last year, we have tilted the portfolio towards fixed income investments to take advantage of the higher interest rate environment that we're experiencing today. In addition to our fixed income portfolio, we have investments in a diversified portfolio of global equities with a bias towards high quality blue chip names. Through Oxford Properties, we hold about 450 real estate assets across Europe, Australia, and North America, and we do have a big emphasis here in the GTA, as I'm sure many of you are well aware. We are invested in approximately 20 large private equity companies and a portfolio of smaller venture and growth businesses, where we seek to drive earnings growth both organically and through acquisitions. And finally, we have about 25 infrastructure investments across the globe, which provide relatively stable income and long-term returns by providing essential services. The big focus here is on transportation, digital infrastructure, and power generation, transmission, and distribution. I would also note that we continue to maintain ample liquidity to pay pensions and to fund investments, and we continue to hold the highest credit rating from 2 of 4 credit rating agencies and the second highest rating from the other 2. Mike, if I could turn to slide 9, thank you. OMERS reported its mid-year results for the first half of 24 on August 15th. We had a good start to the year. The 10-year average annualized return was just over 7% at the mid-year mark, and the 6-month return was over 4%. As an aside, you had asked me last year about our 20-year returns, and while we don't report 20-year returns at the mid-year mark, I'm pleased to share with you that as of the end of 2023, so December 31st, 2023, our 20-year return was 7.2%, in line with our 10-year return at the same date of 7.3%. I'll just note a couple of the things that drove our mid-year results, in particular public equity markets driven by the technology stocks that are powering the AI boom, and private credit markets driven by attractive credit spreads provided us with tailwinds. On the other hand, our real estate portfolio has been under pressure from high interest rates and high cap rates, which have negatively impacted real estate valuations and dragged down returns in spite of growing rental income. The infrastructure portfolio was another bright spot for us as it continued to provide steady returns. We also benefited from the appreciation of the US dollar, with 50% of our geographic exposure, as I mentioned, in the US, and our strategic decision to maintain currency exposure to the US dollar. Now, obviously, we don't pay pensions with percentages. We pay pensions with dollars, so I think it's also important to note the smaller print on the page. We generated $5.6 billion of investment income in the first 6 months of 24 and nearly $70 billion over the past 10 years. Turning to our next slide, those 10 years of investment income have helped to boost OMERS funded ratio. That's the light blue line that you see on the slide, from 86% at the end of 2012 to 98% as of June 30th, 2024. Even after taking into account the impact of using a real discount rate, the dark blue line on the slide, which is 50 basis points lower or more conservative than it was 12 years ago. This significant improvement in the funded ratio has taken place in spite of the odd challenging year for investment returns and the recent period of high inflation, which significantly increases our liabilities due to higher expected pensionable incomes and higher expected inflation-adjusted benefits. If you'll note, that's the dip in 2022 on the light blue line from 97 down to 95. Fortunately, we've been able to generate average annual returns of 8% over the last 3 years, and that has helped us to weather the storm of higher inflation and to generate the funded ratio of 98% that you see on the far right. I'll turn to slide 11. Thank you, Mike. On October 22nd, OMERS is going to be presenting to the city's Infrastructure and Environment Committee on our approach to sustainable investing, but I did want to touch on it briefly here with you. In particular, I want to highlight our sustainable investing commitments and the progress we've been making towards them. I'm pleased to share with you that we have achieved a 52% carbon emission reduction across our portfolio since 2019, relative to our 2030 goal of 50%. Now, I'll highlight here that we've always been of the view that this is a number or this is a direction that won't be a straight line necessarily. The number may move up and down from year to year, but what I want to point out is that we've made meaningful progress at reducing the carbon emissions across our portfolio. We are also growing our green investments to a target of $30 billion by 2030, and we've already surpassed the $20 billion mark in that regard. We've created a $3 billion transition sleeve to facilitate investments in high carbon businesses or assets in need of funding to execute against credible transition plans or decarbonization plans. And importantly, we have committed that our top 20 highest emitters, which make up more than half of the emissions across the portfolio, will have credible net zero plans by 2030. Our long-term focus continues to be on achieving net zero across not only our portfolio, but also our operations by 2050. That's it for me for the moment. I'll hand it back to Joe, but I'd be happy to answer your questions once Joe's finished with his presentation.
As I mentioned earlier in my remarks, the Sponsors Corporation ABC mandate is about appointments, benefits, and contributions. We focus on 4 key areas highlighted in this slide. We conduct periodic reviews of our governing policies like any board to ensure that we remain relevant and support good governance over time. We work with sponsors to complete appointments to both boards. It is important, of course, that we have directors with appropriate skill sets for the variation of these 2 boards, including enhancement of diversity and inclusion on our boards. We also assess the continued appropriateness and fairness of contribution and benefits across our large and diverse membership, including both future and current generations. And finally, as I noted earlier, in order to ensure the plan's resiliency to adverse experiences as it matures, it's important we continually monitor the plan's long-term funding health. This board mandate underpins our mission, which is to ensure that we deliver a sustainable, affordable, and meaningful OMERS plan to our members. Last year, I advised this committee that as part of its monitoring, the Sponsors Corporation was nearing completion of its most recent lengthy review of the plan's long-term financial plan and financial health. Shortly after last year's meeting, the Sponsors Corporation board announced the conclusion of the assessment. Following substantive analysis and stakeholder consultation, the board concluded to stay the course on funding and benefits and use favorable future experience to build reserves as the plan matures. This would ensure the plan has the resilience it needs to deliver the pension promise for generations to come. So the board concluded there was no need to change benefits or the total, and I emphasize total funding contributions to the plan at that time. Earlier this year, the Sponsors Corporation Board updated 3 policies that guide the Sponsors Corporation when making decisions related to contribution and benefits. These policies are long-term in nature and are intended to help improve the resiliency of the OMERS plan into the future. The board also completed its most recent contribution rate study. Reviews of the contribution rates are done with regular frequency to preserve the fairness, and I emphasize fairness, of the allocation of contributions paid by our diverse membership and their employers over time. They do not change the total funding for the requirement. In other words, it's cost neutral for OMERS revenues. Rather, it's about who pays how much relative to the benefits they are expected to receive. The Sponsors Board concluded that following the most recent actuarial review of the contribution rates, a reallocation of rates between classes was required to help ensure that contribution rates continue to be fair and reasonable across all of our diverse group of members. This will be the first change in contribution rates since 2015. Consistent with the board's conclusion of the plan risk assessment, meaning that long-term financial review from last year, the total contributions that OMERS collects from members and employers will remain unchanged. These changes will, however, result in some members and employers paying more, while most will pay less. Finally, the corporations deliberately chose a January 1st, 2027 effective date. In other words, 2.5 years from now in implementing these changes, to allow the sufficient time for members and employers to prepare for and budget for these changes. So with that backdrop, what will the reallocation of contributions mean to the City of Toronto? I'll take a few minutes on this slide. The approved changes mean that contributions for members participating in the normal retirement age 65 provisions of the plan and earning less than approximately $90,000 will pay less. And I'm referring to the box on the right-hand side of this slide. In other words, that NRA 65 column, 8.6%, and going down to by 0.4%. All other members, including police and fire and the NRA 60 provisions, as well as the higher paid members and the NRA 65 provisions, will pay more. Overall, 70% of all OMERS members contributing to the plan will see a decrease in contributions. For the individual member, the size of the increase or decrease in take-home pay will depend on how much members earn and which normal retirement age provision they participate in. It is anticipated for the City of Toronto as a whole, contributions will be an increase of 1.3% starting in 2027. As I said earlier, this is a periodic review of contribution rates which occurs every 5 years, and the next review is scheduled for 2029. Now, looking forward, the committee may or may not be aware, following a request from some sponsors and stakeholder organizations, the government recently advised of its intent to conduct a governance review of OMERS. The last time the government did a review of OMERS governance was in 2012. The review will include the evaluation of the current governance model and will assess its effectiveness, decision-making processes, composition, and engagement with employees and employers. The governance review will not assess the financial sustainability of the plan, recent decisions on contribution rates that I just discussed, or the fairness of plan benefits. In other words, it's purely on governance. And of course, in the spirit of continuous improvement, OMERS intends to fully cooperate with the government's review. And finally, as you may not know, I will be retiring from the Sponsors Corporation Board at the end of this year. My replacement will be a familiar face if the committee is not fully aware. Is a familiar face to you. It's Juliana Carboni. I believe the city has made, from my perspective, an appointment to the SC board that has more than the required skill sets to represent the city on the OMERS SC board. A quick reminder that Julie oversaw pension and benefits administration for the city for years, knows the OMERS pension plan very well, and as importantly, brings her consultative leadership qualities to the Sponsors Corporation. And Julie, will you please stand for those that don't know? And I'll simply summarize, Mr. Chair, as I wind down as your Toronto rep. I strongly believe that the OMERS pension plan delivers a pension that it meets its mission of being sustainable, affordable, and meaningful for all of its members. And it does so through a skilled, dedicated, and professional staff and both boards. With that, Mr. Chair, we're open to questions.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
I just wanted to note, as many of you know, Joe has a very deep, long-standing history and knowledge base around the city of Toronto, and I would just note that he has been a fantastic partner to me in representing the city and bringing me up to speed on all things related to the city. So I thank you, Joe, and commend you for your efforts. I would also note, Mr. Chair, that we have with us today George Cook, the chairman of the Administration Corp Board, who's sitting just directly behind me for the committee's benefit. Thank you.
Joe, you look like you wanted to say
Well, I
something.
was just going to say, we have also the CEO of the Sponsors Corporation and other staff here for, depending on the detailed level of the questions.
The grilling?
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. Juliana, great to see you again. Congratulations. Joe, I don't know what it means. This is your second retirement I'm involved in or get to witness. So thank you for all of your work over the past 9 years on the board. And questions? And Councillor Holiday?
Is it in order to ask our CFO?
I think so, yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is to our CFO. In the presentation, it's noted that there would be a 1.3% increase in contributions. If I understand it correctly, that means 1.3% for the members, the employees, and 1.3% for the city. And if I don't understand that right, let me know. But I guess my main question is that built into our financial planning assumptions for the next few years to 2029? Or does that present a new pressure onto the budget?
Through the chair, so the estimated impact is in the year 2027. So as we build our budget this year, we'll build it with a 3-year view. We will be adding the impact of that in the year 2027 as part of our outlook, with the expectation that across the city and the impacted agencies, there's going to be an impact of about $5 million a year.
What's the $5 million a year compared to what? The total payroll?
Through the speaker, compared to the total payroll, compared to our total contribution benefits across the city today.
Could you give me a sense of $5 million to what? You don't have to have an exact number, but I'm assuming in the billions.
Through the chair, 438 million would be what it would be in comparison to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Armstrong, my next question is to OMERS. In your presentation, you mentioned that you have the highest credit rating on 2 raters and the second highest rating on 2 other agencies. I don't think you issue any products. So what does that mean to the company? Why is the credit rating important?
We do actually issue into capital markets. We have recourse debt that we issue in the North American market, the European market. We recently actually issued our inaugural issue in Australia as well. So we have a very global investor base, and that supports the investments that we make across the portfolio.
So is it more important for the products that you issue in terms of, commanding a higher interest rate?
It's
Lower?
Yes, a lower.
Lower,
Correct. You're
thank you.
correct.
Yep.
Yeah, a lower rate on the issues that we complete. The investors expect a lower interest rate directionally, the higher your credit rating.
Right,
And
because it's a
so-
good quality product.
Exactly. Yeah. So it helps us to invest to the benefit of members with those lower cost of capital, or with that lower cost of capital.
Is it important with respect to your credit facilities for liquidity and things that you need to do to maneuver, right? So you're getting a lower rate at the bank.
It does influence the rates that we would get from banks. It does impact our overall liquidity, the extent of leverage that we can tap. And it also, in stressed markets, higher credit issuers tend to have a better reception than lesser credits.
So here's the hard question. What are the factors, the ingredients that go into the ratings? What are the agencies looking at? And then what are you doing to mitigate any concerns they have?
So these are very comprehensive reviews, but maybe at a high level, scale, diversification of the portfolio, the extent of our liquidity is very important. The degree of our leverage, we maintain less than 10% financial leverage in terms of the external issues that we do, and so that's viewed favorably. The global nature of and diversification of our portfolio is viewed as attractive. I think importantly in today's environment, our sustainable investing practices are also considered by rating agencies. And the things, in terms of the things that we're doing, we're in constant dialogue with the credit rating agencies. Maintaining that credit is important, not just from an issues perspective, but I think it's reputationally important as well, so that people know that we are a credit-worthy counterparty as they evaluate their pensions.
So you talked about some of the big sliders, right? Big decisions that you make in terms of investments and things that you issue. What about the things that are directly in your control? The actual company itself, the governance that you have, the rules, the controllership rules you've got in place, all those nitty-gritty things that people are using to analyze risk. Are those trending in a positive way, and do you have a process to manage them?
Yeah, I mean, risk management in particular is, I think, one of the advantages of driving your investments with an in-house team of experts as opposed to an external team. One of the benefits of that is you can better control your risk management. You have your hands on the wheels, so to speak, and to understand and measure those risks. And we're constantly evaluating those, and the board has eyes on all measures of risk across the portfolio. I'm not sure if that's addressing exactly your.
Well, you said the board does, so I mean, that's okay. And I know I'm stealing a bit of time probably because it started late, but
Not supposed to point that.
yeah, I'm just being honest, Chair. Now I forgot what my question was.
Maybe an example.
I'll give you an easy question.
Sure.
Everyone worries about inflation for lots of reasons, but could you tell me why, as a pensioner, I should particularly be concerned about inflation and what impact it has on the dynamics of OMERS?
So inflation, importantly for OMERS, it impacts both sides of our balance sheet. So I mentioned in my remarks that higher inflation impacts our liabilities. So it increases our liabilities because the expectation is that incomes will rise as a result of that inflation. And obviously, inflation-adjusted benefits will increase, and therefore your liabilities go up. We have built a portfolio to thrive in many different markets, including a higher inflationary market. And an example of that, part of that comes from the diversification, but an example of that is many of our infrastructure assets, which represents in the order of 20% of the portfolio. Many of our infrastructure assets create a natural hedge against inflation, and that's one of the reasons that they're very attractive to us, so that we can protect against situations or environments where we have high inflation.
I mentioned the liabilities, obviously assets, inflation impacts returns. Some of our portfolio does well in inflationary environments and some of it does lesser performance in those environments. But we need to be set up to survive and thrive in low inflationary environments as well as in higher inflationary environments. And right now, as I mentioned, we're tilting towards fixed income because as a result of the high inflation, we have higher interest rates right now, and that secures our pensions, reduces the risk, if you will, of the income streams that we're earning. So we have an opportunity, it's a generational opportunity. We haven't seen this in 20, 30 years where we can invest in fixed income and earn a reasonable return for our pensioners.
Thank you, Chair. I'm way over. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Haulage, not a problem. Questions, Councillor Crisanti?
Yes, Chair, thank you so much. And Joe, I just want to say it's good to see you always. You have not changed a bit. You look great, and I wish you all the best for your retirement. But I'm really excited to hear that Juliana's filling your shoes. And Juliana, if I knew you're going to be in that committee room, I would have made the trip down to City Hall. So I look forward to seeing you as well sometime. So just to the question about risk management that Councillor Holiday was asking about. And I think you've always invested in very safe investments, but I'm trying to understand when you were discussing the 10-year return at 7.1, 6 month at 4.4. Can you talk a bit more about your investment portfolio? And then the last the last comment you made was an 8% average annual return. So, and the numbers aren't adding up to me. So, what does your portfolio look like, and what is the average annual return, say, over the last 5 years?
I apologize if we've created confusion. I think some of the confusion may stem from the fact that I referenced different time periods. So I did reference the fact that as at June 30th of 2024, so looking back over the 10 years up until June 30th, our 10-year return was 7.1. I also referenced in my remarks that as at December 30th of 2023, looking back at the 10 years ended at that date, our 10-year return was 7.3. The 4.4 is a half-year result, so that's for a 6-month period as opposed to a 10-year period. And then the 8% I referenced, I apologize for all the time periods, the 8% period that I referenced was in relation to that dip in the funded ratio. So we saw the funded ratio go from 95 down to 92, and now it has recovered to 98. It has recovered because we've been able to achieve an 8% return over those 3 years. So we've had very strong investment returns over the last 3 years to recover from that dip. Does that clarify?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
It does clarify it. And I believe, if my memory serves me well, Joe, last year, I believe you alluded to the fact that there were concerns about the plan's long-term funding. I don't see that a concern now. Can you comment on that, or did I misunderstand about that?
Well, I guess I'll caveat what I'm about to say by the history, the past is not a precursor for the future, so to speak, but you do see on the slide that 12 years ago we were at an 86% funded ratio, and today we're at a 98% funded ratio. I think we do have to balance that with the fact that the demographic dynamics that we're managing, and I think maybe I'll turn that over to Joe to comment on that.
I think John's highlighted the key thing that, we started 15 years ago at a very low funded ratio that John highlighted in that slide. When we dipped down from, a reminder, from the high of 120% funded at the end of last century, 1990s, down to 86 for a number of reasons. And at the end of the day, we've been spending 15 years trying to get back to 100% funded. and we've made huge strides as that slide highlighted. And the trend is to, in our actual updated strategic plan that both boards are about to finalize at the end of the year, we're targeting, 100% plus going forward over the next 5 years. And at the end of the day, as I noted and as John's highlighted in specifics, we believe that the investment portfolio is primed to meet that objective. So yes, there's challenges year to year, month to month, but our long-term plan, we believe, is strong and will meet the challenges of the future.
As the return on investment improves, Joe, over the years, do the members benefit from that in some way? Do they benefit in terms of further adjustments to their pension?
It's a good question, Councillor. I mean, at the end of the day, the 100% funded is the target. We want to build reserves and be above that. Over the last 10 plus years, we've basically maintained our members' plan design, meaning all the benefits. As I think you're aware, we have very strong benefits relative to our comparators. And at the end of the day, those benefits have been maintained and will be maintained into the near future. When we possibly have a buffer and significant reserves above 100%, then there may be consideration by the board for potential enhancements, if you will, for our members into the future, but that's a long-term vision.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crisanti. Other questions to the presenters? Councillor Cheng?
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for this presentation. I was wondering, what role does social investment play in the portfolio?
So it plays a very significant role. We, as a long-term investor,
are very committed to sustainable investing. We've developed what I would characterize as a very principled risk-based framework to guide us in this regard. I would say to you that sustainability-related risks and opportunities, there are opportunities as well, have a major impact on the ecosystem in which we operate, invest, and do our business. And as a long-term investor, we need a healthy and sustainable world to keep our plans, investments safe and secure for our members. We integrate ESG factors or environmental, social, and governance factors into every investment or asset management decision that we make in just the same way that we incorporate, for example, financial considerations. I sit on the investment committee, and in the materials that I see in reviewing investments, I see financial metrics, I see detailed operational metrics, but I also see sustainability metrics and considerations. A couple of other notes I would make: our climate action plan, which was published last year, recognizes that climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time. And it describes the strategies and actions that we intend to pursue on our path to net zero. The very nature of our business as an investor and an entity that pays pensions has a significant social impact on our nation. And lastly, as it relates to governance, we believe that best-in-class governance will allow the plan to operate in the best interest of our members. And so we're highly committed to that.
Thank you. And as you may know, the City of Toronto has an ambitious net zero goal for 2040. So there is a 10-year gap between your net zero goal and our net zero goal. And I wonder, what are the opportunities to align those closer together?
Look, our sustainable investing strategy has been well considered at the board with external advice and taking the benefit of external advice. We are aware of the city's 2040 goal. This is something that we're humble about sustainable investing. It's a new environment. We're all learning as we go. How do you measure carbon emissions? How do those get evolved? How do disclosures evolve? We're not professing that we have all the right answers today, and we're very committed to adapting and evolving over time. I think that's probably where I would leave it today, is that we take all these factors into consideration on an ongoing basis, but it's a living, breathing discussion.
And you had mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm wondering what kind of policies exist both as an employer within OMERS as well as in your approach to investments.
Within OMERS, I would say we've made great strides around D&I. In my past life, was a big champion of D&I. I have 2 young daughters, and I come from a financial services background, so I'm very hopeful that my daughters inherit a very different financial services world when they go into the professional workforce. So I've always been a big champion of this. But I think at OMERS, Blake Hutchison, our CEO of the Administration Corp, has been a huge champion around D&I, both internally within OMERS, but also from an industry perspective in terms of some of the Investors Network Council that he sits on and chairs historically. Our Women in Leadership program has been incredibly successful. I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but very high proportions of the people that we have put through that program in 3 cohorts now have gone on to see promotions in their career. It's been a big focus for us around HR. And this is something that we're highly committed to. We have 3 of our most senior leaders that report to Blake, our Chief Risk Officer, our Chief Pension Officer, Celine Shivati, who is here with us today, and our Chief Human Resources Officer are all women.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Other questions for the deputants? Seeing none, I just have one. So in your one slide deck, you asked where you outlined investing in Canada's priority, and I see in the news lately OMERS closed your venture capital arm in Europe. So that cut down your direct private equity investment, I understand. And then today or yesterday, depending on the time clock in the world, you made an investment in a company in India that I think owns a lot of toll roads. So I'm trying to understand the investment strategy. Are you investing more in Canada, or what's the goal?
Yeah, what I would say is Canada, Canada is a big part of the portfolio at 20%. And if you think about our portfolio, philosophically, we're big believers that it's in the members' best interest that we have a global portfolio where we pursue the best opportunities for them, taking into account returns, risk profile, the scale of the opportunity, et cetera. Owning 25 infrastructure assets versus owning 100. Our team can be much more focused on 25 than they can be on 100, so scale does matter. Canada remains a big part of the portfolio at 20%. Global GDP, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's in the order of 10 to 15, if that, Canadian GDP, capital markets, excuse me. So if you think about that, we're overweight to Canada, as we should be. We pay pensions in Canadian dollars. We need to earn income in Canadian dollars. We're working with all levels of government to unlock an environment that is conducive to investment and to look at specific opportunities to invest more in Canada where opportunities suit our investment criteria for our members. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we are fiduciaries for our members, meaning that it's their money.
at the end of the day, and our obligation is to generate the best opportunities that we can for them, taking into account both return, but also risk profile, or the desired risk profile.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Thank you. Appreciate all the information this morning. I think that's the end of the grilling. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry, Councillor, Mr. Chair, a supplementary to Councillor Crisanti's question about impact for members, and I would like to highlight what I overlooked. I said that basically our plan design and benefits have been maintained, but the important point I want to make is, as I think councillors are aware, pensions are indexed, and that's been, it is a financial pressure, but the board has moved on and continued with that. And the most recent indexing for pensions in 2024 was nearly a 5% increase because of inflation. And so that's something that, of course, is dear to all OMERS members' hearts, and we've continued that. And I do want to highlight that, and Councillor Crisanti, I should have highlighted that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And he just gave you the thumbs up, Joe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. And can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Mantas, all in favor? That carries. And then our next item is number 7, non-competitive contract with Rocket Software for proprietary court management software licenses, professional services, and related maintenance. It was held by Councillor Chang. Councillor Chang, do you have questions of staff?
Yes, just a few questions. The first question is, why is this a non-competitive contract?
Through the speaker, thank you for your question. So this software was used for a number of different services at the city. There were a total in 7 services. Our intent was to move off of the software entirely. We were able to move 6 of the 7 to existing platforms. This particular piece around court services is unique in terms of our requirements here, and so we are recommending that we stay on the current software.
So is this a bridge to something else when this contract ends, or is this something that we're just very comfortable with and we're probably not going to change in the future?
Through the speaker, currently we're looking at a minimum of 3 years of staying on the current platform. There is an opportunity, we believe, in 3 to 4 years, along with the provincial courts, to be part of a competitive procurement at that time.
And how many years have we been using this software now?
2005. Through the speaker, since 2005.
So that sounds like quite dated software. Have there been substantive upgrades and updates to the software since 2005?
Through the speaker, yes, there have been. So it is an on-premise solution, but we have been staying current with upgrades along the way. There is another, actually the solution is going to change to a new product. So we are moving to that new product from the same vendor in November. So by end of year, we'll be on the most current.
And is that product similarly used in other court services in other cities across the country or province?
Through the speaker, there are very small number of solutions. As far as we know, we are one of the largest using this platform. I don't know the exact answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we are upgrading and updating ourselves. So it does sound like it's a tried and true, but then maybe there are new opportunities. And I hope that in this 3-year window, we explore every new possibility out there. But thank you for your answers.
Sorry, I was talking with the deputy city manager.
Those are all my questions. I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Chang. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, I had a couple. So just to kind of doing my online research, so there's 2 components here. There's Rocket Software, and then there's the Mobius software platform. So when there's a company called Guard that does reviews of websites and security systems. So Rocket Software, they got a security rating of a B. And when I looked at the other companies that Upgrade was doing, so like Starbucks, for example, got a higher rating for the security of their website than Rocket Software did. So that kind of raised my eyebrows.
So we did do a full vulnerability assessment through the CISO's office of the software itself, and it is in compliance. And we are fully expecting with the migration to Mobius, it'll be fully compliant as well. So I'm not sure if it was on their website itself or on the software, but we are.
This was a secure, so just for Rocket Software, they got a security grade of a B. So that was a little bit worrisome for me. So I was just wondering, as we look at our vendors, because I also read another article a couple of weeks ago about the number of software systems in the United States that had security issues and concerns around it, which made me do a Google search of Rocket Software, and I came up with a B rating for their security system, which is a little concerning for me. And then the Mobius software, I found another review in a technology magazine, and just to read in part, it said Mobius has been around for several decades, and while it was once a leading edge solution, it can no longer keep up with modern data management needs. The technology has not kept pace with advancements in the field, and it no longer is being actively developed or improved. Furthermore, it is an outdated technology that's not fully compatible with modern systems and tools anymore, making it challenging to integrate with other systems. So as I read that, and then we're looking at the length of this contract, and it, in conjunction with the issues that they had in the States around software vulnerabilities, that kind of raised my eyebrows and concerns.
Yeah, so just 2 points on that. Prior to maybe midsummer, we had about 7 different services that were on the software. So we were successful in migrating 6 off of the software onto other solutions existing at the city to help mitigate any of these concerns. The one piece that will remain is to support court services, because there is a unique integration with the provincial software that we're using. I hear your concerns on the security side. We can take that back, but it is an on-premise solution. We have run it through our CISO and our assessments, but we can take another look at the article that you're referring to, just to make sure we're.
And so you're planning on integrating this with the provincial system?
It's already integrated, has been integrated for a couple of decades at least, which also makes it unique to our needs.
Okay. So you're fairly confident Mobius isn't going to come back and bite us?
I'm confident that we've gone through the assessments, and our CISO has looked at it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, no more questions of staff. Councillor Chang, did you want to speak or move it?
I'm happy to move staff recommendations.
Okay, all right. So we're moving the recommendation before us. All in favor? That carries. And our next item, is number 9. GG 17.9, award of a collaborative procurement contract for Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace Master Agreement, OECM 2023-441-11, to Outdoor Outfits Limited for Toronto Paramedic Services via the city stores. Held by Councillor Chang. Councillor Chang, questions of staff?
Thank you. I'd just like to take this opportunity to learn more about our procurement process as we look at our choice of vendors. And I'm just wondering, as we choose a company to procure, this is clothing items, how much do we look at their work practices? Do we look at, are there ethical work practices? Are they importing clothing from countries that, don't use child slave laborers? Are any of those factors taken into consideration when we are procuring something like clothing?
Of course, through the chair. So in this instance, this is a collaborative procurement. So we are quote unquote piggybacking off a contract that was established by the Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace, OECM. So they would have run a competition, specifically a request for proposal, that would have looked at multiple factors within their proposal. So we did not, just for clarity, we did not control this RFP, but we would, as part of our review, ensure that it's aligning with all of our policies as well as some of our priorities, including fair wage and the ensuring that we are not endangering children through child labor practices.
Great, thank you so much. I just, I'm always learning more about procurement from you, Genevieve, so it's much appreciated. I think people will be grateful to know that when we procure things like clothing especially are vulnerable to countries that do engage in slave labor, so I'm grateful to know that that's not happening in the City of Toronto. So thank you. Those are all my questions, and I'm happy to remove staff recommendations.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cheng. I believe Councillor Holiday has questions of staff.
Thank you. Two parts to the questions, just to make sure I understand the subject matter of the procurement. Because if you read the names of the companies and the words in the report, you could think something else. But this is for paramedic services for uniforms, right?
Through the chair, that's correct. It's outerwear for the paramedics.
Right. And so, but the vendors are a whole series of, I just call it custom apparel. And, there's all sorts of different names in here, from Staples and Mark's Commercial to McCarthy Uniforms to all sorts of things. But they all make custom apparel, and I'm going to guess that includes embroidering on clothing, that kind of stuff.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. So it's interesting because the name of it is the Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace Master Agreement. There's a number. Who is the Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace?
Through the chair, I can speak to that. They are a cooperative. They've been established since, I believe, 2006 as a nonprofit body that does procurement for specifically education markets. But it's grown, and therefore, again, we are allowed to use these opportunities as another tool in our toolbox of procurement to accelerate this.
This is what I'm getting at. So I see. So this is, maybe it's not the right term, but they're effectively like vendors of record under the umbrella of an organization that is bigger than the City of Toronto. So I guess it's Ontario-wide.
Correct. It is Ontario-wide. It would be similar to the VORs that you would be more familiar with within the, Supply Ontario.
So is this Ontario government, or is this another entity?
It is another entity.
But it's very big, so it's bigger than the City of Toronto.
I can't speak to the size, unfortunately. It is very specific. It's a niche market initially for educational products, and it has grown to what it is now to offer services or allow us to piggyback as a buying group.
And this is what I'm getting at in terms of our procurement strategy. Instead of going on our own to the marketplace and doing all of the work that's required to set up one of these agreements, we found one that already exists out there that offers other people to join into it and use their collective buying power. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the analysis was this was the best way to do it. It was cost effective from an administrative perspective, but also you were happy with the pricing.
That is correct. There is a process that we follow whenever we do want to sign on to a cooperative, which includes an analysis of pricing, requirements, what they've offered, ensuring that our practices are being followed as well, so that we have to ensure that they follow public procurement practices that align with ours.
The reason why the report's here is because you got to go 6 years, not 5, and 5 is the usual limit.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, and maybe my last question is, as a practice, yes, indeed, as a government, we will go out and create our own procurements, but we also look to the marketplace for opportunities such as this to join the work of others, which, what's the saying? As the tide rises, it lifts all boats. So it's even better for this collective to have another client such as ourselves. And the same would happen as well if we joined a vendor of record at the Ontario government.
That is correct.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Holyday, other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Cheng to speak.
I'm happy to move staff recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Cheng is moving the staff recommendations on GG 17.9. On favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 17.12, 21 Western Battery Road. It's a below market rent agreement with the Network Childcare Service for childcare services. Held by Councillor Cheng. Councillor Cheng, questions of staff?
Thank you. Is this program under the community tenancies program?
Through the chair, no.
So what classification are childcare services then in our, how we run space to other agencies? Is childcare a separate delineation then?
Through the chair, that they're considered a nonprofit operator.
So childcare, is it because they're a not-for-profit or because they're childcare that they're not designated as a community tenancy?
Through the chair, they're designated as a childcare operator.
I see. And I know one of our challenges in the city is the state of good repair, which is a growing backlog. And so when we enter these agreements, we give a significant discount in rent because these are important parts of services that we want to provide for our communities. But in that calculation then, is there an estimated state of good repair I guess, pressure that will be created as this property ages over time? So in 20 or 30 years, this property will likely need some state of good repair maintenance. And in that case, the rent that we receive, will it contribute to be able to cover that state of good repair? Or for every childcare space that we rent, as well as community tenancy, are we then also increasing the future pressure on our state of good repair?
In this specific case, in cases where the childcare centers are in condo corps, there's a CAM charge, and part of that CAM charge is there's a reserve fund. So the childcare operator will contribute to that reserve fund, and then it's the responsibility of the condo board to ensure that the maintenance and repairs to the condominium as a whole are completed over whatever that life cycle is.
So that would pertain to the exterior and maybe infrastructure of the space, but would that include the flooring inside the space or things that are internal to the facility?
Through the chair, that would be considered a leasehold improvement, and that would be the responsibility of the operator.
So I know that we're hesitant to grow our portfolio of community tenancies, and because of the risks that agencies aren't able to cover those costs. So how are we mitigating that risk by putting the responsibility on the not-for-profit operators?
Through the chair, the operators understand that depending on who the landlord is at the base building is responsible of the landlord, whether it's a city operator city owner or a different owner. It's known up front that the operators will always be responsible for improvements of the space they actually occupy.
And they have to pay a condominium fee to the condo corp?
In this specific case, where there's a CAM charge, the part of the CAM charge includes a reserve fund. In most cases, depending on how the space, and I don't know in this case, the developer will provide all of the services to the unit itself, so that the operators will know exactly what they're paying from an operating perspective. And of course, the board will set whatever that reserve fund is, and that percentage of cost will be allocated so they know what their annual contribution will be. So they'll have to forecast it as part of their, future spend.
And they're paying $45 for interior space and $22 for exterior space per day, per week, what is the rate here that I'm reading?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, those are just our estimates.
Right, but is it an estimate of the rent per day or per week or so it says, based on a market-based rental rate of 45 for interior space and 22 for an exterior space with annual inflation of 2.5%.
Sorry, Councillor, to you, through the chair, Councillor, those are our market rates that we have to disclose. The operator's not paying those. So that's sort of the benefit that we list within the report, otherwise had to rent it at market rate. So in any report that we bring forward for below market rent or a tenancy or a municipal capital facility, we always put in our reports what that market value is.
So our opportunity cost is 7.5 million approximately over 20 years.
That is correct.
And what challenges do you see as we desperately need more childcare space of taking on more of these tenancies across our city? Are there any financial risks to the city?
Through the chair, as you know, Councillor, the child cares are legislated, so don't foresee the risk being high in these cases.
Great, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Chang. Other questions on this item? Seeing none. Speakers, Councillor Chang, you held the item.
Happy to move staff recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Chang's moving the recommendations on GG 17.12. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 17.14, extended authority of the bid award panel during Council's 2024 summer recess, held by Councillor Chang. Councillor Chang, questions of staff?
Yes, I'm wondering, why is the report limit set at 20 million? Is that historical? How did we land at 20 million for this report?
Through the chair. So this report is limited to 20 million because BAP is assuming the authority of standing committee during a recess. So this report in particular is only addressing those particular procurements that went over that threshold.
But how did we decide to make that threshold 20 million versus, some people might say, well, 10 million is a lot of money and we should have more line of sight for 10 million or 15 million. So why did we decide 20 million?
Correct. So this is, again, based on current standing committee practices. The other reports are going to bid award panel, so up to 20 million. Unfortunately, I'm uncertain how these thresholds were actually established back in the day. I can say that this is an item that we are looking at for thresholds for bid award panel as part of recent recommendations or recent motions, as well as other motions that are asking for expediting of procurement. So we will be coming back in Q1 with a bit of an analysis.
Great. And in that analysis, will we also consider an upper limit? Is there an upper limit of what can be passed in August when we're not sitting?
Everything's on the table right now, through the chair, pardon. We have not really configured what we will be presenting, but we can look at this. We do have to keep in mind, though, that this is only for competitive contracts. So at this point in time during recess, we are not approving POAs, so purchase order amendments, and or non-competitive. So these are only for competitive contracts. And again, in our goal to expedite procurement, we have not put in a limit to this date.
I'm sure my fellow committee members would want to see an upper limit. I don't think we want to see 100 million contracts being approved. without convening, if it's an emergency meeting. And also, I think, does it create some risks when we have this window every August that every division knows in August they can pass things perhaps more easily without the line of sight of council because we're not sitting at that time?
Through the speaker, so there is and there continues to be a review process. So while any award that would be above the delegated authority through the bid award panel would still require a sign-off and an approval, there would always be a view around the timing and whether or not that award could move forward to the next and upcoming general government committee, or if due to urgency it would have to be signed off. But there would still be a review process that would happen between the city manager, the CFO, the DCMs prior to anything being awarded. And then again, in terms of belts and suspenders, it would then come forward as part of this report that you see here today, noting what had been awarded and why.
So who would make that final call on the necessity of urgency?
So through the chair, this would be a discussion with upper management and the client division to see about the current circumstance at hand and if it's required. I can also attest to the fact that just because we can go through recess authority, there are also times when they are delicate files that we will direct clients to maybe delay on that award, and or clients will take the opportunity themselves to say they want to delay.
So who would be the person who identifies that and pushes back on the request? Is that you would make that decision, or is that the city manager or our CFO?
That decision could come from multiple individuals and different parties.
And through the speaker, also note, general practice is we will try to avoid awarding during that period unless it's absolutely required.
Great, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Mantas, questions of staff?
And then myself, Chair.
Contract coming. Oh, sorry. So there isn't a possibility that you would have a snow removal contract or a waste management contract coming in the summer months that are high value.
Through the chair, so we will review it against the urgency, the necessity. We'll also look at it in terms of public interest, council interest. Those will all be factored into any decisions that will be made. I will note, generally, we would try to avoid that summer month unless there's an absolute requirement as to why an award would have to be issued.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mantas. Other questions of staff on this item?
Yes, sure, I got one.
Councillor Crisanti, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, again, I'm not sure I heard it before, and you may have answered it. What was the upper limit for awarding? So it says over $20 million. What would be the upper limit for this period of time?
Through the chair, if I heard you correctly, since it was just a little mumbled in the room, there is no upper limit.
Oh, so regardless of the value of the contract, and now and what about time? What time frame are we looking at? The summer recess only, correct? Which would be from when to when? As after our last council meeting in July till September, when committees begin to surface?
It would be the day after the last council to the agenda close for the first standing committee.
Okay, thanks. When was this delegated authority approved by council? What period of time?
Through the chair, I don't have the exact date of when it's been approved. I can say I've been at the city for about 18 years, and I believe this has been in place for every year that I've been here.
All right, so I guess it's been around even during the years that I was there. I just don't recall it being what I recall that there were limitations to what can get awarded during that period of time. I can't imagine what would be so critical and urgent in terms of awarding a contract for the sort of 6 or 7 weeks that we're not sitting, or even less than that. Can you give me an example? What might come up during the month of August that, there's a fire and we got to put it out. We got to, award this contract, and we can't do the normal process for award. So what could it be? Is there an example you could offer up in the last few years that may
So
have...
through the chair, this report itself identifies that there were only 4 instances this year where the delegated authority was leveraged. Table 1 of the report identifies the 4 instances, which revolve around road work, water main work, some operations at an organic processing facility. So again, it is limited. There were 4 instances where we leveraged this delegated authority, and they're reflected in the report.
Yeah, no, I realize that. So I guess I wanted that repeated for the public. These are urgent situations that come up, water main work, water breaks, situations on, it's similar to that are absolutely urgent and must be dealt with in this period of time. Outside of that scope, then nothing changes and everything else can wait. Am I correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you, Chair, for good.
There's been times when we've had
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crisanti. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, it was held by Councillor Chang. Speakers?
Yes, I just want to speak briefly about this. So I am concerned that there isn't an upper limit, and I also think that the chain of command is not clear. Who is actually deciding the final decision of if this is urgent enough to be delegated? And so I look forward to the report that's coming out next year, and I hope that it addresses some clarity of who is going to make that final decision. And I don't think it should be a floating responsibility. I think it would be great if the deputy city manager, perhaps, of the division that each decision belongs to has the final say of whether or not this should be delegated, or perhaps it should be our CFO. But I don't think it should be as unclear as it sounds, because it sounds like there's many people who could make that decision. And secondly, I'm not sure 20 million should be the threshold in terms of the report, because it's just a report. We're getting a list of what's happened, and maybe that should be lowered to 15 or 10 million, because those are large sums of money, and it's good to just have a report back that is more fulsome. So I hope all of these can be under consideration in the report back that is coming. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Chang, are you moving the recommendations?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers on this item? Councillor Chang's moving receipt of the information. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Our next item is GG 17.15 Toronto Paramedic Services Climate Report, held by Councillor Chang. Councillor Chang, questions of staff?
Yes, so we know that the city has a very ambitious goal of net zero by 2040. And in this report, it's my understanding that there's no electric paramedic vehicle that is approved by the province. So I'm wondering what we can do to address that gap in terms of, should we be advocating with the province, or are there jurisdictional scans of other municipalities that have found compliant vehicles, or do we have to advocate for changes to the requirements? What is the gap between what is available and the requirements?
Through the chair, thanks for the question, Councillor. That's correct. There are no ambulance vehicles, to be specific, that are available on the market as we speak today, that are certifiable under the Ministry of Health requirements, which are very stringent. There's really only one manufacturer that's available to us in Ontario. And we are actually advocating through my level, at chief's level, and my fellow chiefs in other jurisdictions, we are advocating with that manufacturer as well as with the Ministry of Health, who oversees ambulance services in Ontario, to open up the market and to allow other manufacturers to make their offerings as well. But currently, so that work is ongoing. But currently, as of today, there are no vehicles that meet. There are no electric ambulances that meet the requirements under the Ambulance Act.
So is the requirement because it's tied to a manufacturer that the province is familiar with and has a relationship with, or is there technical requirements that currently are not manufactured in Canada?
Through the chair, if a vendor is interested in offering ambulances in Ontario, they have to be certified by the Ministry of Health, which requires engineering, pull testing, a variety of tests that are required under the Ambulance Act to certify them as a vendor that they can sell ambulances in the Ontario market. And right now, as it stands, there are 2 companies that are under one umbrella that have been certified by the Ministry of Health to sell ambulances in Ontario.
And those 2 companies are currently not manufacturing any electric ambulances. Are they planning on adding to their stock the variety of ambulances that they provide?
So they do have one. It's in trial period right now. It's not yet certified by the ministry. They are working with the ministry to get this electric ambulance certified. We don't have a current timeline, but we're monitoring that closely.
And are there other manufacturers that do build green ambulances or electric ambulances that are interested and are in the process of working on certification?
That part I can't speak to. That's between the vendor and the Ministry of Health. We do interact with the Ministry of Health on a regular basis, though, just for updates to see how the market is shifting, and there is more interest for sure.
And are there any other municipalities in Canada that have found electric ambulances and are using them that fit in with their own rules and frameworks?
Our last jurisdictional scan did not reveal that anybody in Canada is using a fully electric. They have some hybrid options, but again, they don't have the same Ambulance Act rules that we do in Ontario.
Great, thank you so much. Those were my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Holiday, questions of staff?
Thank you. To paramedics, where do ambulances go to sleep at night? I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek, but you know, like what happens at nighttime? Do the ambulances keep working?
Just what the chair just said, yeah. But yeah, to be truthful, through the chair, our ambulances are running constantly. Very few of them actually, are idle for any extended periods. They're running 24/7.
So what do you do when they run out of gas? You fill them up?
Through the chair, our paramedics are very skilled at ensuring that they don't run out of gas, and they fill them up at when the tank reaches usually about half a tank, to make sure that they fill it up and that they can continue to keep running.
If you were all electric, how would you charge them then?
So through the chair, that presents a challenge because, as has been mentioned through some of our other reports, our paramedics spend a great deal of time at hospitals. And so, without getting into, how that would look, I mean, it would require charging at those sort of off-station locations, which would be quite an undertaking in and of itself. So, I think that's really the bigger challenge for us, is trying to address the issues around paramedics spending a great deal of their time in hospital.
So what I'm getting at with my questions is that there's more to the story than purchasing an electric vehicle. There's a whole bunch of considerations about how you operate and how you would top up the battery and so on, that has to be planned out. Is that a fair scratching of the surface?
Through the chair, I would agree with that characterization, yeah.
And that, ambulances are a little different than city fleet vehicles, which, could sleep at night. When the day ramps down and if it's not involved in night operations, that, the city could charge its vehicles and facilities, but on a 24/7 operation, for instance, paramedics, there's additional complications on these sorts of things.
Through the chair, that's correct. And to be clear, as is mentioned in the report, we are, for all of our end-of-life non-ambulance vehicles, or our administrative and support vehicles, as they approach end-of-life or reach end-of-life, we're endeavoring to replace them with hybrid and electric vehicles.
Right, and their profile of use might be a little different.
That's correct.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other questions of staff on this item? Councillor Burnside.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Hey, did you retrofit some buses? Hybrid, electric?
Through the chair, we have not retrofitted buses, no.
Okay, ambulances, nothing?
We did at one point. They were retrofitted with a hybrid.
That's what I'm talking
kit. Yes. Yeah. Those subsequently had to be removed because of various issues that we were experiencing back in 22, 23, and those subsequently had to be removed.
How many vehicles did you retrofit that had to be removed? Was it a couple?
It was in the neighborhood of 114, 115 vehicles.
Okay, so I guess why I'm asking that question, there's a purpose to going slowly, and there's a purpose to the ministry making sure that everything is 100% in terms of vendors and suppliers and getting the right vehicle. Is that kind of a lesson maybe learned?
Through the chair, I would agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Other questions of staff on this item? Did I hear Councillor Crisanti?
Yeah. Yes, Chair, thank you. So I think I could do this quickly. I'm noting here that your your 24 operating budget includes 13.8 million for operating costs. The 25 budget, however, is only proposing 12.4. Can you explain that? Sounds like you're proposing less than what you need to operate.
Through the chair, Councillor, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm reading here is the 24 operating budget includes 13.8 million for operating costs related to the vehicle fleet, while the 25 budget proposes 12.4 million for the same purpose.
Yes, through the chair. Currently, our ambulance fleet is quite elderly. It's taking a lot to maintain them. We are finally anticipating some new vehicles through the vendor, which will reduce our operating costs. So we are anticipating when the new group of ambulances arrive, we'll have less operating costs in 2025.
All right, you're anticipating. So I hope that actually works out as you anticipate. I don't want you to be stuck where the new vehicles don't arrive on time and so on. You're still operating old vehicles, and then you find yourself a couple of dollars short. So that's just a consideration there. How many vehicles, what does the fleet look like? How many vehicles on the road?
So currently there are 234 ambulances, and we have roughly 150 non-ambulance vehicles. They are a variety of first response units, our logistic vehicles, our command units.
My understanding is, and experiences I have up here with my constituents telling me, the paramedics doing a phenomenal job. And you know, considering you're running a very lean operation, you're under stress there. How many total paramedics do we have? And you know, moving forward, have you included additional vehicles to add to your fleet to be able to respond to all emergencies in a timely manner?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. Through the chair, we have approximately between 1,400 and 1,500 paramedics. And yes, we have ordered new ambulance vehicles. One, as Melanie mentioned, to replace our fleet that has reached end of life, but also to meet the growing demand in the community.
Excellent, good. And yeah, I just want to make sure we're doing that and we're satisfying, and that you're asking for what you need in the 25 budget. One more question, in an effort to, reduce the footprint, and it says here that there's an additional almost $2 million being allocated for emergency vehicles. I'm not sure what allocated for what. What's this $2 million for? Over a few years, 24 to 33.
Through the chair, that's for extra vehicles outside of the ambulance fleet. So we have golf carts, we have emergency response units. It's to modernize and electrify our other vehicles.
All right, so that's not money directly needed for your ambulances and the vehicles you use that respond for your first responders emergency, right?
That's correct. So
okay,
it's over and above the ambulance fleet.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crisanti. I believe that's the end of, sorry, Councillor Mantis. Nope, okay. Speakers on this item. Councillor Chang, you held the item?
Yeah, so I know it seems perhaps improbable or unlikely in the near future that we would convert to electric ambulances, but it is interesting to note that the UK, London, England, did launch their first one in March, and I'm sure we'll be able to learn from their implementation. In addition, our electric ferries that we're building, some of these ferries can charge as quickly as 6 minutes. I've also seen new technology that makes it possible to swap out batteries in vehicles. That is also a way to reduce the charging time. And so we are on the cusp of a rapidly changing landscape, and I hope that we continue our jurisdictional scans to see what is possible and what is practical given our situation with limited fleet that's overworked and not having enough time to do overnight charges. So I think there are plenty of new opportunities on the horizon, and I hope that we keep our eyes open for them as they evolve around the world. Thank you, and I'm happy to move staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Other speakers on this item? Seeing none, I'm just gonna, Chief, thank you for the report before us today. It's very much appreciated. I know the ambulances and paramedics across the city are very busy. I know you have a number of other vehicles within your fleet. Maybe there's an opportunity there to bring more electric vehicles forward. But at some point, the paramedics that I talk to, I know how busy they are. If they're not in an ambulance going somewhere, they're in a hospital looking after the people that they're bringing there. I appreciate the standard of care that people get through that whole process as they're waiting to be admitted to hospitals or transferred from one institution to another. Thank you for your due diligence in looking at this report and the jurisdictional scan you do, and I'll support receiving this report. Thank you. All in favor of receiving the report? Sorry, adopting this recommendations. Thank you, Matthew. All in favor? That carries. And our next item is our last item. GG 17.16, update on the status of public spaces around Nathan Phillips Square and Toronto City Hall, held by Councillor Mantis. Councillor Mantis, questions of staff?
I have one question to staff. Can you describe to staff through the chair? Can you describe the process that we currently have for the cost recovery method used for operations at Nathan Phillips Square?
Through the chair, so just to to provide some background information, it's a tri-party management of Nathan's Phillips Square between corporate real estate, economic development, culture, and parks, forest, and recreation. So EDC is responsible for the programming of the Nathan Phillips Square. We're responsible for the maintenance and the capital, and then Parks, Forest, and Recreation is responsible for the landscaping. So I can't actually speak to the cost recoverable piece because that's done through EDC, who manages the events. And my understanding is that the people that pay for the events and the services provided by the city work on a cost recoverable basis with respect to the programming.
But do you find through your department that the pressures on the square are higher over the years, and that there's a more, because of also inflation and increase of costs, that there's a higher cost for the maintenance of the square?
Through the chair, the cost of operation versus capital, I mean, on the operating side, it's gone up incrementally with respect to operating the square. And for the most part, because there are events almost on a weekly basis, for the most part, any services provided by CREM in support of programmings works on a cost recoverable basis.
So if there was a fund for Nathan Phillips Square where funds could be allocated from events or from other financial instruments or projects that could be created on the square, would it be something that your department would like to look into or consider?
Through the chair, and I'll have EDC weigh in as well, Nathan's Phillips Square is designed to be a public space and a public meeting space. So council actually directs, if there are any changes to Nathan's Phillips Square based on recommendations. So I'm not quite sure what you're asking in the question, Councillor.
That how can we make Nathan Phillips Square to be self-sufficient from a financial standpoint and from our operations standpoint?
So, Councillor, through the chair, I mean, from a programming perspective, that's run by EDC, and I'd have to ask them to answer that question with respect to self-sufficiency. Again, corporate real estate's responsible for the operations and maintenance of the asset itself. So we don't generate revenue, corporate real estate, with respect to the square itself.
Okay. And those are my questions.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Mantas. Other questions of staff on this item? Any online? Seeing none. So I just wanted to ask, so there's a active Parks and Recreation, CREM, are kind of the three groups looking after Nathan Phillips Square. And so CREM's the overviewer of that group?
Through the chair to you, Chair. So CREM manages the actual maintenance and repairs and capital program for the square. The actual programming of the square is actually EDC. So it's a tri-party management. So repairs, maintenance, capital is corporate real estate. Programming is through EDC, and the landscaping is done through Parks, Forest, and Recreation, and the three groups work collaboratively to maintain the square.
Okay, so my first question kind of revolving around that, because as I brought this forward, I've had a number of my colleagues coming to me with suggestions around what to do to make the square better and animate it. One of them was about using buskers on the stage during the day. So if we wanted to bring something like that forward, does that come here, or does it have to go to economic development and culture?
I'll defer that question to EDC.
Through the chair, thanks for the question, Councillor. We do have a process by which organizers can apply to have a permit to permit the square, and that is part of our programmatic activation. We also internally have a city cultural events that has some activation on the square. So for example, Cavalcade of Lights is one of our internal pieces, but there is a process. It launches late fall, and then we basically book the square for the following year.
And how does that process get advertised? So for example, the square today or this morning is empty at lunchtime, so the stage isn't being utilized. So some of my colleagues have said, hey, can we get buskers there or a band there at lunchtime if it's not being used during, how does that process how does the outreach get done to like musical groups or BIAs or?
So through the chair, we certainly reach out through a number of venues and organizers. We work through our music office. We work through a number of producers that would connect with economic development and culture in our various areas. So to spread the word, both that the applications for the following year are open, and then to follow up in terms of what the process is and those sorts of things. To your point, in terms of the opportunity for broader activation, that's certainly something that we'd be happy to discuss.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then back to Mr. Matozzo in CREM. So when I look at the square, it hasn't changed. So have we ever looked at getting like a landscape architect looking, because I know at the front, there's more benches at the front. The cement, I don't know what they were, blocks are gone. I think it was a ventilation system. But the grass on the lawn under the walkway at the south end is now mulch. And then in the report, I think it says something about there's 92 chairs on the square. Is there an opportunity? I don't understand. How does 92 get reached? Have we ever had a landscape architect? One of my colleagues said to me on the walkway, a quick fix around greening the walkway, putting planters up around the walkway with bushes or trees. Like, have we ever had a landscape architect look at the square?
So through the chair to you, Mr. Chair, in the original revitalization project that was completed in 2015, there was a landscape portion to be done on Queen Street and Bay. At that time, the FM group that was leading that, it was de-scoped because of funding constraints. We're currently reevaluating that as part of the unfunded portion of the preservation study we have right now. So we're looking at that. The one constraint on Queen Street right now is we don't know the timing of the Metrolinx Ontario line, which will be coming through there at some point. So we could have a look at that as part of the preservation study that we currently have unfunded. But again, we're looking at that as part of the capital prioritization framework to see what funding we can put in the 2025 budget. But I will just add as well, Councillor and Chair, Mr. Chair, and for members of the committee, between the revitalization program that was completed in 2015, the Spirit Garden, which was recently completed, the rehab work that we're doing, we also modernized the ice refrigeration system for the rink. The city's already invested in the last 10 years about 90 million.
Yeah, and then the last part of your report, there's a reference to the parking authority has to rebuild the garage under the square, or there's state of good repair work that has to be done?
We recently met with TPA. They've completed a building condition assessment of the entire parking lot, which includes the city. So they're working through bringing forward a business case on doing repairs to the parking lot as a whole. They haven't delineated yet what the portion of the city yet, so we're waiting for that part of the report to advise us on the value of the repairs. That's just the city part of the parking lot, because the majority of it is with TPA.
But just to add, Mr. Chair, as noted in the report, the total investment required at City Hall, including all the parking structures, et cetera, Nathan Phillips Square, the 2 towers, the podium, is over $300 million, right? When you look at CREM's, and I presented this in the Budget Committee last year, when you look at CREM's capital budget, we have a backlog in the state of good repair of 1.5 billion, and we have new requirements totaling 500 million for a total of $2 billion unfunded. Just to put some perspective on this discussion, we agree that we need to make major investments in this building and the square.
Okay, thank you. I'm at my time limit, I believe. Sorry, Councilor Burnside?
Yeah, and thank you for raising those points, because that's kind of where I was going. We're really talking about putting Band-Aids on a patient that's fatally ill. Like, it's like, respectfully, my opinion, and I have to ultimately get to my question, but our square is an embarrassment. My question, and it's not staff's fault, it's council's fault, and that's supposedly where we're welcoming people to our city. But my question is, the overhead walkway, is that usable?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is usable. As you will perhaps remember, the ceremonial ramp was closed
That's what I couldn't remember.
because it was unsafe, so we had to close it. We did emergency repairs in the July-August timeframe. It's open once again. Those are temporary emergency repairs. It's open once again, but and we're doing a number of engineering studies, you know, with the overhead walkways. You'll also notice in the rear of City Hall, there's barricades because we had concrete falling off of the side of the building. So all of that work, all of the engineering studies are currently underway. And we do have a plan and capital allocated to ensure all of those walkways are safe.
Okay, so to summarize, we have a parking lot that's got serious water issues below, yeah?
So the estimates for the TPA portion of the parking lot are $100 million. So it needs major rehabilitation.
Yeah. Okay, so we have serious water issues. We have an overhead walkway that we are constantly fixing. I don't know if we've done all our vehicle mitigation efforts, like for, right at the front. Anyway, we need $300 million. So really, do we not, I guess what I'm asking is, do we not like basically need a redesign, a reimagination, and some serious renovations?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. It does need it. You know, it's been 10 years since the former revitalization. 10 years, I mean, it's not a long time, but as Pat mentioned, we never got to complete the full extent of the revitalization fronting Queen up Bay because of funding.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Burnside. Councilor Cheng, questions of staff?
Thank you. I think this line of questioning has been very informative. So $300 million pressure, 100 million of the 300 is parking, or is that exclusive of the TPA piece?
Still waiting for them to delineate what portion.
Sorry, Pat, microphone.
Apologies. Through you, the chair, to Councillor Cheng, the 102 million is what is TPA's portion of the repairs. We're still waiting for them to delineate what portion is the city's.
Sorry to add, Mr. Chair. It's at the end of the day, it's unfunded amounts and it's all city money, and it's an integral part of City Hall and Nathan Phillips Square.
Right. So my question was, is the 100 million that you're estimating for the TPA piece included or excluded from the $300 million pressure that you spoke about that would fix up the entire thing?
The 100 million of TPA is inclusive in the 322. To David's point, it's city money at the end of the day, so we're carrying it in our budget.
Mm-hmm. And how does the state of Nathan Phillips Square compare with other civic squares in our city?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would put it on par. So all the civic centers need major investments. I think the most recent investment we made in a civic center was at Scarborough. I mean, as we discussed with you at length, Councillor, Through you, Mr. Chair, Mel Lastman Square is in need of a revite.
Especially with a sinkhole that appeared a month ago during an event. It is worrisome that we allow such important parts of our city to degrade to this point where safety is even at risk. So what are the opportunities to fund these revitalizations in the 2025 budget process, recognizing that we wouldn't necessarily need to fund the entire thing at this point, but I think at the very least doing the analysis and some preliminary design work would be important parts towards the excellence that I think we should be representing at all of our civic squares.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think we're on the same page, Councillor. That's what we're currently going through with the 2025 budget. The one thing I would say is we want to make sure that we have line of sight to delivering the project so we don't have large gaps in time between doing a study versus executing upon a construction project. I would say the other thing, just back to the overarching CREM capital plan, first and foremost, we're ensuring public safety in our buildings. We also have to meet legislative requirements. Those include programs like AODA programs, which are measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars when you look across CREM's portfolio, which is over 460 buildings. And then we also have to consider another big unfunded piece is our transition of our assets to meet Transform TO goals. So there's, you know, too few dollars and too many priorities.
And Etobicoke is getting a new civic center. Does that civic center come with a new civic square?
Through you, Madam, Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Get the hang of it eventually.
I'm used to speaking at council. So yes, the Etobicoke Civic Center does come with a new civic square as well as other city services, including a recreation center and other city services as part of that development.
In light of this investment, which is very important, are there things that we can learn from how our current other civic squares, how they've been aging, how they're used? Are there things that we can learn from all of these sites that can be applied towards the design and sustainability of the new civic square that is being built?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the answer to that question is yes. I think where we perhaps get constrained is in cases where we're designing based on the output of design competitions, which may complicate matters. But in general, I would say yes.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. I think that's all the questions of staff, speakers. Councillor Mansis held this item. Councillor Mansis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recognizing the pressures that all city assets face, we need to make sure that our assets are, I would say, self-sufficient. Oh, I'll read the motion first. That the motion reads, the General Government Committee requests the General Manager, Economic Development and Culture, in consultation with Chief Financial Officer, to review the existing bylaws and municipal codes applicable to the Nathan Phillips Square and report to the end of Q2 General and Government Committee on the feasibility of assessing the current fee structure for the event bookings on Nathan Phillips Square, with proceeds from the fees allocated or other financial instruments to a dedicated reserve fund capital improvements of Nathan Phillips Square.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mansis. Questions of the mover? None? Okay, other speakers?
Sorry, I have a question of the mover.
Councillor Cheng?
Yeah, so we know that there's a lot of not-for-profits that are animating our square, and that the fees that they pay are sometimes even already a stretch for them to be sustainable for their events, as well as the economic impact of these events. Is there a risk in this motion that we could outprice the not-for-profits and charities that are animating our square in very meaningful ways that bring benefits that are not financial to the city?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Chang, I don't think that that we will outprice the organizations from a financial standpoint. I just think that it's a good opportunity for our divisions to look at the way that the fee structures are right now created and implemented, and if there is a better way of charging fees for organizations, then that would be part of also the assessment for this project and this fund.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Chang. Other questions of the mover? Councillor Holyday?
So one of the things we heard in, I think, the questions today is that there's a tripartite agreement. I'm not sure it's a formal one, but at least it's a tripart operation that includes parks and CREM. You don't intentionally exclude them from the conversation with your motion. You just fix the lead on EDC.
Exactly.
Okay, so it would be okay if they also join the conversation.
Absolutely.
With municipal codes. Because in some ways, it's also a park. Thank you, Councillor. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Holyday, other questions of the mover? Seeing none, excuse me, other speakers on this item? Councillor Burnside, and then Councillor Chang.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a well-intentioned motion, but the kind of money we need, I don't think it's going to come close to what we need. There are going to be too many carve-out and exceptions and exemptions, and it's just more overhead and more work for staff. So unfortunately, I have to vote against it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Councillor Chang.
Thank you. In our growing city, our civic squares play a very important role in gathering people, in connecting people, and in strengthening our democracy, because people who feel like they belong to a place are more likely to participate. And so as we consider not just Nathan Phillips Square, but other squares in our city and the role they play, they should all be excellent tourist-worthy destinations because for many people, traveling to Nathan Phillips Square is quite a distance. We are the city that's an hour away from itself. And so Scarborough Civic Center, Mel Lawson Square, and the future Etobicoke Civic Center are all important spaces that we should not let fall into such a state of good repair that they are no longer safe or usable. And really, they should cast the vision for what we want our entire city to be, that when they come to these squares, they see what the city of Toronto represents. So I think that, you know, I don't envy the job of our Deputy City Manager, David Jollimore, and the folks at CREM, Pat Matozo, and our CFO. You know, in our city, we're constantly having to balance our very limited budget and the growing state of good repair backlog. But I think that our civic squares should be prioritized in our capital prioritization framework because of the role that they play in representing our city and making us accessible to not just our residents, but to the world that comes to our doorstep. So I do look forward to the 2025 budget process in consideration of how we can cast that vision through our strong investment in our civic squares. And definitely Nathan Phillips Square should be a visionary place so that when residents, not just residents, but tourists from around the world come, they see a representation of a modern, beautiful, and sustainable city that we are in process and aspire to be. So yeah, thank you for this report. And I do look forward to how our financials are going to work out in our 2025 budget process.
Thank you, Councillor Chang. Are there speakers on this item? Councillor Holyday?
So I think the motion is a report request. I take the comment from Councillor Burnside seriously about having more work added, but I'm willing to hear what the price is and what the implications are. But I think what I'd do is remind the committee that, you know, all of this is a series of choices by council. We as a council approved, I think, $135 million now for electric ferries. Could we have done it differently? I don't know, but that was a choice of council. In today's report, I think there was a choice somewhere along the way to have a net zero building for the new ambulance station, and that cost money too. I think as a council, there was direction last week to, you know, to provide meals for the last third of the city of kids and then look at creating lunch meals on top of that. It all costs money. So here we have a square that is in need of upkeep because someone made a choice a long time ago that this would be the city hall as opposed to one of the other buildings, and along with it came the square. They're all choices. And how we make those choices is important. So having this information to weigh out, I can accept that, and we will again as a committee have to make a choice on how we deal with that. But I just hope we're cognizant because lots of these choices are made, but it's impossible to do them all. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Holyday, other speakers on this item? Seeing none, I'm just going to thank staff for their ongoing work on Nathan Phillips Square and the other squares, all of the staff, because there's more than one department looking after it. But the reason I brought this report forward was as somebody that walks through regularly through Nathan Phillips Square to get down to Union Station to get the GO train, and you see little things that seem to fall off the radar screen. Like there was an electronic billboard in the southeast corner that hasn't worked since pre-COVID that's gone now because it's outlived its life expectancy. We installed decorative fountains on Nathan Phillips Square, once again, I'll say pre-COVID, that are no longer working, that when they were installed, I remember they had a 10 to 15 year life expectancy. The pumps don't work anymore. We have seating on Nathan Phillips Square for, I think, 92 people in a city of 3 million people. You know, I think the Toronto sign is amazing. Like I walk through, there's people from all over the world each and every day taking pictures in front of the Toronto sign, which is great. You know, the Albert Campbell Square, which is a bone of contention for me, needs a lot of work as well. Councillor Chang just mentioned Mel Lastman Square had a sinkhole. You know, there's a $300 million backlog of state of good repair, but I think, you know, as we're watching Nathan Phillips Square get chipped away at, I think we need to find a way to put that money back in there and put the chips back where they belong, and, you know, maybe looking at a landscaping expert to see what can be done to improve the square, you know. But we also walk that fine line, and I know staff walks that fine line between what we decide to give staff as a budget and then what we demand of them to make sure the square lives up to a respectable level of upkeep for the largest city in Canada. So I'm going to continue to keep an eye on this and work with staff, and I want to thank staff once again for all the work they do under the constraints that we as a council have imposed on or given to them, and we'll keep this moving forward. Thank you very much. So we have the amendment to vote on for Councillor Mantis. All in favor of the amendment?
Can we take a recorded vote, please?
Sure. So a recorded vote on Councillor Mantis's motion. All in favor? Councillor Mantis, Councillor Holyday, Councillor Ainsley. Those opposed? Councillor Burnside and Councillor Chang. That passes.
Mr. Chair, I was in favor. Maybe you didn't see my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Crisante, I didn't see you on the screen. Sorry, how are you voting?
In favor.
In favor?
4-2.
So that's 4 in favor, 2 against, so that amendment passes. All in favor of the item as amended? And that carries. And bills? No bills. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Holiday, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, Chair. Thanks, everyone.